Throughout the history of humankind, no question has stirred the heart and challenged the mind more than the question, does God exist? Civilizations have risen and fallen, philosophies have been born and abandoned, wars have been fought and peace has been sought, yet this one question has remained at the center of human thought. Some have denied it, some have affirmed it, and some have remained suspended in uncertainty. But the search for God is not merely a matter of faith or tradition. It is also a matter of reason, logic, and absolute necessity. When we begin to analyze existence carefully, peeling away the layers of distraction, we discover that the evidence for God's existence is not weak, vague, or emotional. It is strong, consistent, and in many ways absolute. These proofs are not mere guesses. They are conclusions that follow from reason itself. The first and perhaps the most fundamental proof lies in the principle of causality. We live in a universe of cause and effect. Everything we see has an origin. A tree grows because of a seed. A seed comes from a prior tree. Water evaporates because of heat. Planets revolve because of gravity. Nothing simply comes into existence without a cause. If you walked through a forest and saw a ball lying on the ground, you would naturally ask, where did this ball come from? If someone replied, it just exists without reason, you would not be satisfied. The question of origin is fundamental to the human mind. Now apply this reasoning to the universe itself. Did the universe begin, or has it existed forever? For centuries, some thinkers argued that the universe was eternal. But modern science, through the discovery of the Big Bang, confirmed what philosophy already suggested. The universe had a beginning. Time, space, and matter all came into existence at a certain point. And if they began, they must have had a cause. But this cause cannot be material, because matter itself began. It cannot be bound by time, because time itself began. The cause must be timeless, immaterial, immensely powerful, and beyond the universe. That cause is what we call God. The chain of causes cannot stretch into infinity without reason. Logic demands a first, uncaused cause, a necessary being that set everything in motion. The second proof lies in the fine-tuning of the universe. Scientists have discovered that the laws of physics are not random. They are structured in a way that allows life to exist. The force of gravity, the charge of the electron, the strength of nuclear forces, all are set at incredibly precise values. Change them slightly, and life would be impossible. For example, if gravity were just a tiny fraction weaker, stars would not form, and if it were a fraction stronger, they would collapse instantly. The same applies to dozens of constants in nature. The odds of all these values aligning by mere chance are so absurdly small that chance ceases to be an explanation. To believe it all happened by accident is like believing a hurricane could blow through a junkyard and assemble a functioning airplane. Some try to avoid this conclusion by proposing a multiverse, an infinite number of universes, each with different laws, and we just happen to be in the one that works. But this explanation collapses under its own weight. For one, there is no evidence of infinite universes. Second, even if such a multiverse existed, it would itself require explanation. Why does the multiverse exist at all? And why does it operate under laws that produce universes? Once again, the explanation points not to chance, but to design. A finely tuned universe implies a fine tuner, and that fine tuner is what we call God. The third proof emerges from morality. Human beings everywhere, across cultures and ages, share a sense of right and wrong. Of course, societies differ on details, but there are certain moral truths that remain absolute. Torturing a child for fun is wrong in every time, place, and culture. Helping the helpless is recognized as good universally. Where does this sense of moral obligation come from? If the universe is purely material, made only of atoms and molecules, Morality should be nothing more than a human preference, like choosing chocolate over vanilla. Yet morality does not feel like preference. It feels binding. Even the person who denies morality still protests when they are treated unfairly. They instinctively appeal to a standard greater than themselves. If morality is absolute, then it requires an absolute source. Evolution might explain how moral instincts developed for survival, but it cannot explain why we ought to obey those instincts. Why should survival be valued at all, unless there is a deeper moral framework? Without God, morality is reduced to illusion. With God, morality is grounded in a moral lawgiver. Just as laws point to a legislator, moral laws point to a divine source of justice. The fourth proof comes from consciousness. Matter, by its very definition, is lifeless and unconscious. Atoms, molecules, and chemical reactions can explain the structure of the brain, but they cannot explain the emergence of awareness, imagination, love, hope, or meaning. How can lifeless matter give rise to living thought? If the universe is purely material, then our consciousness is nothing more than the firing of neurons, an illusion with no real meaning. But deep within, we know that our consciousness is real. We know ourselves to be more than matter. We reflect, we imagine, we choose, we create. This inner light cannot be explained by physical particles alone. Consciousness points to a conscious source, a higher mind that made minds possible. That mind is God. The fifth proof is found in the sheer existence of reality. Why is there something rather than nothing? Nothingness cannot produce something. From nothing, nothing comes. If the universe did not exist, nothing would exist, unless there was something eternal that has existence by its very nature. This necessary being must exist outside time and space, must not depend on anything else, and must have the power to bring everything else into existence. This being cannot not exist. Its existence is absolute. That is what philosophers describe as God, the necessary being who explains why anything exists at all. The sixth line of reasoning comes not from logic alone, but from human experience. Across cultures and throughout history, people have reported experiences that point beyond this world. Near-death experiences, visions of light, encounters with overwhelming love, all these suggest that our reality is not limited to the physical. Even more, humanity's deepest longings point toward transcendence. We hunger, and food exists. We thirst, and water exists. We tire, and sleep exists. Likewise, humans long for eternity, meaning, and God. If every natural desire corresponds to something real, then our universal longing for God suggests that God exists. All of these proofs converge. Each, on its own, is strong. Together they form an unbreakable chain of reasoning. The universe requires a cause. The laws of physics require a designer. Morality requires a lawgiver. Consciousness requires a conscious source. Existence itself requires a necessary being. And human longing requires a fulfillment beyond the world. Denying all of this requires far more faith than affirming it. To say that the universe came from nothing, that fine-tuning is a coincidence, that morality is illusion, that consciousness is an accident, and that existence has no explanation is to commit intellectual suicide. God's existence is not a blind leap of faith. It is the most reasonable, logical, and necessary conclusion. The human mind may never fully grasp God's essence, just as a painting cannot fully grasp the mind of the painter. But reason can recognize that the painter exists. Similarly, the universe, with all its beauty, order, morality, and consciousness, points beyond itself to the one who is eternal, necessary, and absolute. To deny God is not merely to reject a belief. It is to deny the very foundation of existence. To affirm God is not to close the mind, but to open it, to acknowledge what logic, science, morality, and consciousness have been pointing toward all along. The question, then, is not, does God exist? That has been answered by reason, experience, and necessity. The real question is, now that we know God exists, what does that mean for our lives?